Grief saved me.
Casualty of war. If he hadn't interfered, he might still be alive.
I've spent my whole life putting bad guys behind bars.
The reasons behind Pauley Perrette's acting retirement were widely assumed to be known. The official narrative was straightforward. A peaceful life was what she desired. However, the records that were leaked paint a different picture. She needed therapy to cope with safety violations, assault allegations, and a co-star she was so terrified of. CBS believed that all would stop with their payout. They were mistaken. At the age of 56, Pauley is now prepared to speak candidly about what actually transpired over those last few years on set. Although Pauley Perrette was born in New Orleans on March 27, 1969, her early years were not at all traditional. The family moved from state to state frequently since her father was employed in the railroad sector. She had already lived in 14 different locales by the time she was a teenager. She never lingered long enough to establish a sense of belonging. However, this continual uprooting taught her how to blend in, adapt swiftly, and read people rapidly. She always maintained that Alabama seemed like home, even though she was born in Louisiana. She became extremely adaptive as a result of growing up in so many different locations throughout the South, something that would eventually enable her to endure the turbulent Hollywood environment. Pauley had already set her sights on battling crime before anyone recognized her as Abby Ciuto. She did more than just watch cartoons and read fairy tales as a child. Real-life crime stories and the science behind apprehending them captivated her. She mentioned joining a rock band, working with animals, or becoming an FBI agent, while other children had aspirations of becoming astronauts or athletes. She meant it too. She studied criminal justice after high school and graduated with degrees in criminology, psychology, and sociology. She continued after that. After relocating to New York, she enrolled at John Jay College of Criminal Justice to pursue a master's degree. She wasn't motivated by achievement or notoriety. She only wanted to know why people harm other people without feeling bad about it. She thought about the question for years. Something that happened to her as she was struggling to make ends meet and study impacted her life forever. She experienced a severe mugging while she was living in Atlanta in the 1980s. Although there are few details, the impact was profound. It was more than just a scary moment. It turned into a pivotal moment. Rather than ignoring the trauma, she used it as motivation. It strengthened her resolve to continue researching crime and assisting others. She began advocating on behalf of victims after that. She never forgot what it was like to be one of those harmed, and she utilized her voice and expanding platform to support those in need. Her time at college was anything but typical. In order to survive, Pauley had to work even harder outside of school than she did in school. She studied criminal justice in Georgia and maintained her good marks. Things became more difficult after she relocated to New York. Wearing combat boots and a mohawk, she worked as a bartender in subterranean clubs, fitting in well with the city's quirky lifestyle. In order to raise money for school, she also cooked on dinner cruise ships and distributed leaflets while roller skating. She later said that all of it gave her an advantage, even though it wasn't glamorous. She was experiencing human behavior on a daily basis rather than merely reading about it in textbooks. Although she hadn't intended it that way, the combination of classroom instruction and practical experience proved to be the ideal preparation for acting. At the age of 15, she received her first tattoo. That was startling in her upbringing in the very conservative South. She had grown up in a devout church where television and movies were rarely permitted. She appeared to be the ideal Southern girl when she was younger. Well-behaved, courteous, with pigtails and blonde hair. However, she felt different on the inside. She used the tattoos to demonstrate to the world that she would not abide by the rules that others had set for her. She accumulated about 20 tattoos over the years, each of which represented a different aspect of who she was. She transformed her body into a work of art that went against all she had been taught. She had just $71 when she eventually arrived in Hollywood in the 1990s. She had recently returned from New York, where she had been working as a bartender in the nightlife and doing everything she could to make ends meet. It didn't get any easier in Los Angeles. She grabbed any jobs she could find and crashed on friends' floors. To get money, she even performed voiceovers for a dial-in song service. She hadn't spent her entire life pursuing the dream of becoming an actress. She stumbled into it in her struggle for survival. And the only reason she leaned into it was because her first goal to work in criminology was not financially feasible. She was making only $5 a day walking dogs along Sunset Boulevard when she was at her lowest. Although it didn't seem like much, it resulted in something unique. She grew devoted to one of those dogs, a pit bull she had rescued from the streets. It was more than just a pet dog. She had a tale about it. When she and a co-star got into a fight years later about his violent dog, the association with Cease made the incident even more significant. It was during those walks that she developed a lifelong appreciation for animals. Since then, she has donated to numerous animal rescue groups. She got her first TV break by overhearing someone converse in a coffee shop, not through agents or auditions. She learned about a casting call for the Drew Carey show as she was seated close by. As a result of that one moment, she was cast as Darcy, an extra who appeared in 4 episodes over the course of 2 years. She then started gradually creating her resume. She was cast in television series such as Murder One and Frasier, as she got closer to her big break with each one. The pivotal moment was the overheard exchange. She played Alice Wisdom, a radio DJ, in the 2000 film Almost Famous, which was a brief appearance. Although it wasn't a major role, she had the opportunity to collaborate with filmmaker Cameron Crowe and actors like Philip Seymour Hoffman. She had starred in a little play called The Price of Kissing a few years prior. Despite not being huge hits, these parts aided in her development as an actress. Almost Famous became a cult classic despite earning little money at the box office. Her roles in those movies demonstrated her versatility and skill before NCIS made her well known. Pauley Perrette entered the audition room in 2003 wearing a simple white t-shirt, sneakers, and loose-fitting levies. She was naturally blonde and not at all like the gothic persona she would later become famous for. But according to reports, Don Belisario said, "That's her," as soon as she walked in. Later, her buddy Kevin Lawson affirmed that Perrette didn't even have to make a concerted effort. Her fast-talking friendliness, love of hugs, and caffeine-fueled enthusiasm were sufficient. She didn't play the part of Abishuto. It was ingrained in her nature. Her fast-talking kindness, love of hugs, and caffeine vigor weren't predetermined. Pauley was just being poised. And everything changed at that instant. Abby wasn't just a team member. She became the center of the team. Fans made it apparent, despite the fact that there is no official CBS statistics comparing her popularity to other characters. The audience adored Abby. She gained popularity among fans, and her involvement swiftly expanded beyond what was anticipated. After recognizing the link, writers continued to increase her screen time. She has made appearances in every episode since the start of the show by the time she left in 2018. Nobody else in the cast had a run like that. One tiny plush animal created more mayhem on the set than any actor could ever hope to. The farting hippo was Bert, a purple plush animal that, when pressed, produced fart noises. A set legend was created from what began as a background prop. The crew and cast battled to keep it. Eventually, in order to prevent people from taking it home, the producers had to lock it away. In each episode, Bert appeared, providing lighthearted relief during the most depressing moments. Abby's fame wasn't due to goods. Unusual details like this are what made it memorable. Perrette took Abby's work as a forensic scientist seriously behind the scenes. Abby was obviously knowledgeable when the 3rd episode, Sea Dog, aired in October 2003. However, that wasn't a coincidence. Perrette studied the science herself and collaborated with actual forensic specialists. To make the character feel authentic, she researched ballistics, DNA analysis, and lab procedures. She didn't only commit lines to memory. She knew what they meant. Abby became more than a fictional character as a result. She had the impression that she could enter a real NCIS lab and start working. Pauley Perrette's passion extended beyond her role. She dedicated herself to important issues. Aiding veterans was one of those. She was involved with the Pups for Patriots Initiative of American Humane, which matches service dogs with PTSD-affected soldiers, as well as traumatic brain damage. Training these dogs can cost up to $30,000. Perrette, however, supported the endeavor and did her best to assist. More than 160 veterans have been matched with trained canines through the initiative, providing them with dignity in addition to support. On the show, it reflected Abby's own admiration for service members. The 7th season finale saw a huge surge in the popularity of the show. In the U.S., the one show attracted over 20 million people. For NCIS, it was a significant event. That year, the criminal drama even outperformed American Idol in terms of viewership. In the 1849 age range, the show increased by 25% from the previous season. The overall number of viewers increased from 14.9 million to 17.6 million annually. This was no ordinary conclusion. It was when NCIS rose to the top of the American scripted drama rankings and remained there. One of the most peculiar yet successful marketing successes was Abby's signature beverage, calf poo. It began as a concept for a design. It was originally intended to be caffeine pills. However, producers changed it to a bright red energy drink since they didn't want Abby to be seen taking tablets on film, and that red cup gained notoriety. 7-Eleven seized the opportunity and launched a campaign that increased sales of energy drinks nationwide by 14%. They also produced calf pow cups with Christmas themes. The majority of admirers were unaware that Pauley Perrette never drank it. She had cranberry juice in her cups. A body double was never requested by Perrette. She experienced extreme claustrophobia even in situations that caused her physical discomfort, yet continued to film without assistance inside cramped morgue setups. She had to confront those concerns during a significant hostage scene in the Bête Noire episode. She didn't recoil. She continued. The show labeled it necrophobia, even when the set made her feel as though she was having trouble breathing. However, it wasn't about dead bodies to her. The walls closing in was the issue. Nevertheless, she remained true to herself. She never allowed fear to affect her performance for 15 years. During her tenure on NCIS, Perrette also secretly produced a webcomic. Under the pen name P, she wrote a series on Abby's experiences in the lab called Lab Babble. No one recognized her at first. The comic had Bert the Hippo, Abby's humor, and her science. Fans finally figured it out. The comedy, however, wasn't the most unexpected aspect. The money was spent there. All of the money made from the ads was given to animal shelters around the nation. Despite the fact that no one requested it, she performed a silent act of kindness. Perrette was awarded a title by Guinness World Records in 2011 that had never been obtained by anyone before. She was voted the most well-liked actress in a crime drama on television. Ratings weren't the only basis for this. The Q score, which gauged how much viewers liked her personally, was the source of it. She, not just the character, she outperformed actresses from Law & Order and CSI. The average number of viewers for each episode of NCIS at the time was over 18 million. But it wasn't simply her gothic appearance or scientific language that set her apart. She made people care because of it. On the set of NCIS, everything changed in October 2016. Mark Harmon returned with Dave, his rescued pit bull, as trouble-free as ever. However, something went terribly wrong that day. A crew member had 15 stitches after being severely bitten by the dog. Production was halted for 2 hours due to the severity of the attack. It was more than a brief scare. Deep physical wounds and psychological harm were caused by the injury. Later, Harmon's lawyer acknowledged that he had cautioned him about the dangers of bringing the dog back. But Dave came back. There was now an undercurrent of terror in what had once been a secure and regulated environment. That incident didn't go away without a fight. It set off a series of events that would destroy the foundation of the show. Pauley Perrette insisted that CBS forbid Dave from ever again being near the set immediately following the dog attack. She felt shook. However, she was incensed when the network allowed the dog to return. In response, she had her season 15 contract amended to include a stringent clause. She would never again appear in the same scene with Harmon after that. It appeared to be a mystery to the fans. They never showed up together on screen. Filming had to be planned around them behind the scenes. Her scenes were filmed with different crews on different days. The entire system grew more difficult to manage as production costs increased. They didn't even share a building in her last episode, which was viewed by 15 million people. The episode had to be meticulously pieced together by editors to give the impression of a relationship when none existed. Pauley then made everything public in June 2019. She tweeted at 6 in the morning, which instantly caused a stir on the internet. She claimed that she had nightmares about Harmon attacking her and that she was afraid of him. She stated unequivocally that she will never work on NCIS again. Neither a private source nor a news interview provided her with the information. They were honest, forthright, and unvarnished. The internet took off. Fans' attempts to comprehend her words caused entertainment websites to crash. Harmon's portrayal as a serene father figure on television was abruptly upended. He said nothing. For many, that quiet just strengthened what she had to say. It was previously unknown that Pauley she revealed on Twitter in 2018 that she had been the victim of several violent attacks. She accused a strong machine of disseminating false information about her departure in writings that alluded to being coerced into silence. She said that she needed therapy after feeling unsafe while at work. She made an effort to follow the correct procedures, as evidenced by the fact that she submitted 3 separate reports. Additionally, it implies that CBS had numerous opportunities to act more forcefully, but chose not to. Pauley found that she had to flee the workplace rather than simply leave it behind. The news that she had engaged a private investigator was the most alarming development. Not that she was only venting, she was collecting evidence. Pauley utilized the investigator's documentation of safety violations on the NCIS set to pressure CBS into a private payment. Several reports claim that CBS paid her between $5 and $9 million. This has nothing to do with a poor script or a wage cut. It had to do with accountability and safety. In order to hide everything, the settlement included a stringent non-disclosure clause. At the same time, CBS was already facing criticism for previous examples of wrongdoing. Eliza Dushku had recently received $9.05 million from them for harassment on another show. The amount Pauley was given indicates that her case was significant enough to jeopardize Mark Harmon's career and CBS reputation in the event that the facts were ever made public. Pauley attempted to return 2 years later with a brand new sitcom titled Broke. It got off to a great start. More than 7 million people watched on April 6, 2020. However, the success was short-lived. The ratings rapidly declined. Just 3.6 million viewers remained at the conclusion of the 13-episode season. The show's rating had fallen to 0.4 among the important demographic of 18 to 49-year-olds. That figure is significantly less than what networks require to sustain a program, and the critics weren't nice, describing the show as uninteresting and aimless. Her TV career ended in quiet despite CBS hopes of reviving it. Pauley was one of the biggest performers on primetime TV, but her comeback was met with poor reaction and low viewership. Pauley sent out a final note just 2 months after Broke was canceled. She tweeted, "I'm free," in vibrant rainbow hues on July 7, 2020. The update wasn't entirely positive. She formally retired from acting at that time. She claimed that she now only has to answer to God, plants, and animals. She stated that the only people who judged her were her rescue dogs. She obviously had no plans to ever work in the field again. Over the course of her more than 25-year acting career, she starred in over 350 NCIS episodes. However, she was now permanently done. There were no plans, no farewell tour, and no interviews. All it took was one audacious message to shut the door. Many were taken aback by what followed. She continued to receive job offers even after she retired. She was asked to make guest appearances on popular shows including SVU, Law and Order, and The Good Doctor. Typically, these parts pay between $100,000 and $300,000. They were simple victories for someone with her background and well-known name. However, she refused, saying that money was no longer the issue. It has to do with peace. She refused to return to that world, despite her prior support of SVU and its goals. She demonstrated her seriousness by declining proposals like this. She had no desire to be famous. She was defending her own health when Pauley Perrette opened her eyes in the morning of September 7, 2021. She realized right away that something was off. She was totally numb on the right side of her body. She attempted to dismiss it, reasoning that perhaps she had simply fallen asleep in an odd position, but the sensation persisted. It felt like someone else's finger was caressing her own cheek. Her flesh didn't even feel the weight of her laptop on her legs. Panic struck at that point. Her doctor advised her not to wait until she called. At a matter of minutes, she found herself at an emergency hospital where medical personnel confirmed her worst fears. She was experiencing a big ischemic stroke at the age of 53. Her voice vanished for 36 hours. She was completely speechless. That wish became a reality because to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. After meeting and spending time together, they even got temporary tattoos that matched. Christina died a few weeks after that. At the time, no one was aware that Pauley had covered Christina's family's whole funeral costs and travel expenses. It was not for show. It was confidential. Christina's aunt's tweet, which was later removed, was the only thing that made it public. Perrette remained silent. She didn't have to. She had previously honored a young girl whose strength moved her, which was what really important. Pauley continued to uphold her morals despite Hollywood's constant calls. She received a $750,000 offer to pose in 2007 from Playboy magazine. No, she said. They returned with around $1 million in 2013. Once more, she declined them. With more than 19 million viewers per week, NCIS was one of the most popular TV programs at the time. She didn't want to be a part of something that made women into things, but Playboy believed she would say yes. She wanted to convey a different message because she was aware that young followers were watching. She stated in a 2014 interview with TV Guide that she was not tempted by the offers, not a bit. She held fast to her conviction that there were alternative ways to demonstrate strength even at personal expense. The biggest surprise, however, may have occurred in 23 when Pauley's will was released during a Los Angeles probate proceeding. Her estate was worth more than $22 million in total. There was not a single $1 left for friends or family. Rather, every dime went to the Innocence Project and no-kill animal shelters. She wanted to prevent any inheritance controversy, according to her lawyer, who confirmed it. She has previously been an advocate for these causes for years. She saved 12 canines in a single year. She left 40% of her will to aid in the release of those who had been unfairly condemned and 60% to shelters. She even asked for one last thing. They would split her ashes. Near a dog park, half would be strewn about. She found her first puppy at a rescue center and the other half would go there.